Just before my group of 4 young astronauts with major personal conflicts of interest blast off to the Red Planet, I'm assured by our team leader that while some corners had to be cut to get our ship spaceworthy, it should do its job just fine. And it does, kind of, which is a great metaphor for Deliver Us Mars as a whole. This platforming, puzzle-solving, interplanetary adventure is trying to do too much with too little, and it ends up touching down just north of adequate. The backstory for our plucky, rebellious, sometimes even endearing hero, Kathy, is that she was separated from her father, Isaac, just before he boarded a colonization mission bound for Mars. Years later, she's been through astronaut school on a climate-ravaged Earth, and a mysterious transmission from Isaac spurs her and her older sister Claire to seek seats on the mission to bring the colony ships back. Periodic flashbacks do a respectable job of filling in the complicated and painful story of their family along the way.
A moon bear for my moon bear.
The launch sequence from Cape Canaveral is among the strongest. It has you perform various checks and launch procedures that feel authentic and tactile before watching through the front window as your ship, the Zephyr, leaves Earth's atmosphere with no cuts or loading screens. You're not briefed on any of these procedures ahead of time, which led to a lot of me swiveling my mouse pointer around frantically, trying to find the highlighted switch for the internal power interval or whatever, but it was neat once I got the hang of it. Outside these scripted sequences, Deliver Us Mars consists of first and third person explorations of an orbital facility and the surface of Mars itself, featuring some fairly simple puzzle solving and occasional frustrating platforming. There are several sections where you have to bounce wireless power beams around, matching the voltage on doors and terminals to get to the next area, and they're generally not too difficult, but I found some of the trickier ones satisfying to solve.
Through.
What wasn't nearly as satisfying were these obnoxious climbing wall segments. You have to click the left and right mouse button at the same time to grab onto a wall to begin with, and you have to do so with enough room that you don't slide off the climbing surface. But this action is so unresponsive that whether you get a purchase or not feels more random than anything, especially in some cases where you have to jump at an angle. Also, one of the moves you need to progress in some of the later segments is never explained at all, and I discovered it by accident when I was just trying out random buttons in frustration after I'd been stuck for several minutes. Pro tip, you can hold S and press spacebar to jump to a wall that's behind you. This lack of direction even extends to some segments of the main story, where you have several different ways you can go but aren't told at all which is the right one, and can end up wandering off in the wrong direction. There is an option under accessibility to always display quest markers, and while I don't necessarily need a big star constantly guiding my every step, it could really use some sort of middle ground. If you tell me to go to Arc Vita without ever giving me a hint about where it is, that seems like you're really leaving me to twist in the wind. At least the characters are endearing. What few of them there are, anyway. Neil Newborn, who you may remember as Resident Evil Village's maniacal Heisenberg, gives a great performance as Isaac, a complex character with conflicted motivations. Kathy herself is brought to life by Elise Chappell, who gives a convincing performance with a wide emotional range.
Okay, bro. Just be honest. You're feeling too threatened by me and my super brain.
And the story is respectable, with the mystery of what happened to the Martian colonists pulling me forward at each turn. The character models can't really keep up with it though. They have a very doll-like, uncanny valley look to them when we get to see their faces at all. A lot of backstory is delivered through these pre-recorded holograms where Hairless, faceless crash test dummies pose in place while dialogue plays. It really looks like placeholder art you'd see in an unfinished game, and the developers just never had the time or resources to replace it. There's also a whole chapter towards the end that jumps from one scene to something completely unrelated, giving me the sense that they cut a significant amount of plot without doing a very good job of stitching everything back together. Performance, especially during cutscenes, is also a major issue. My RTX 3080 powered system exceeds the recommended specs, but in many cinematics I would see my frame rate drop below 10 FPS even with DLSS on. I had to turn off the per strand hair rendering altogether because it kept glitching out. In regular gameplay, it's usually fine, but this is clearly not a very well optimized project. A rousing mystery brought to life by a great voice cast and nuanced character writing can't really save Deliver Us Mars from its shortcomings. Poor technical performance during cutscenes and a backstory that is too often delivered by these barely differentiated mannequins make it difficult to get sucked into this extraterrestrial world. Even when it's running smoothly, frustrating climbing and platforming mechanics are just a chore to get through so you can reach the more clever puzzles and rewarding exploration that break up the annoyances with moments of wonder and satisfaction. But I can never shake the feeling that Deliver Us Mars simply bit off more dehydrated astronaut food than it could chew. For more off-world adventures, check out our reviews of Dead Space and High on Life. And for everything else, stick with IGN.